Welcome to the Globetrottin ADs. This podcast is for you, athletic directors, activity coordinators, coaches, and program associates based in international schools around the world. The Globetrottin ADs is proudly hosted by Nick DeForest from the American International School Vienna and Matt Fleming from the American International School of Budapest. Here they are now, Nick and Matt and the Globetrottin ADs.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Globetrottin ADs. Here we are, Season 4, Episode 12. Today, our guest is Timothy Baghurst. Tim is the director of FSU coach at Florida State University. It's a master's program he's going to give us some information about. He's also the president of the National Association for Kinesiology and Higher Education, and which I just found out a little bit ago when we were chit-chatting, a certified pickleball instructor, which is very exciting to know about. And so we're going to find out about his programs. We're going to find out a little bit of background on what he does at FSU and how it can impact our listeners out there in the Globetrottin community. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and say hello to my colleague Nick in Vienna. Nick, it is February 1 already, 2023. January is behind us, but we are still in the midst of the busy winter season. So how you holding up over there?
Yeah, we're doing great. Busy but exciting basketball tournaments, and I know for you swim meets, it's back to normal, which is exhausting and exhilarating at the same time. But great to be here and have another episode about a master's program. So hopefully this catches the interest of our listeners. You know, we had one last week, which was a master's of ed, and then totally different one. Well, maybe not totally different. We'll find out, but definitely different in name, master's in coaching from the Florida State University. So that's pretty cool. I think, Tim, thanks for taking the time to be here today.
My pleasure. And I should mention thank you because you were on my show a few months ago. So it's much appreciated. Yeah.
Well, it was a good time. No, on the video there and talking a little bit about international schools and coaching in general. So that was fun. And great to go back and forth with you now and dive into your side of what you do. So why don't you start us by just telling us a little bit about you and how you got to FSU?
Sure. Well, long story short, originally from England and spent a lot of time in some different countries growing up before doing most of my education in England and Wales and then transferring that to the US, where I did a master's in Texas and did my doctorate in physical education at the University of Arkansas. Did some stints at Arkansas teaching in colleges, did a 7-year stint in Oklahoma at Oklahoma State University teaching there. It was there really that coaching really took off for me, though. I had always wanted to go into coaching, and going through my academic world, there was no coaching degrees, right. And there still aren't many, but I had an opportunity where I experienced somebody telling me they were going to coach a sport and then told me they had no experience playing that sport or training in that sport, which I couldn't believe. You're coaching a sport, you don't know anything about the sport. And it was really just to get a paycheck. So I went to our dean at the time and just said, I think we can do something in this space of developing coach education in Oklahoma. Will you let me do it? And after doing some research with athletic directors and so on, she gave me the green light. So we started developing coach ed programs in Oklahoma. Well, the opportunity came for me after a few years of doing that to come to Florida State and develop something a little bit bigger. You mentioned we have a master's degree. Yes, I'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to come to Florida State to develop a center for coaching education, rather than always expecting people to come to us and get training. Can we also go to them and give training? And to my knowledge, this is the only coaching center in the country. So we go out to organizations, we go out to schools, we go out to clubs, and we teach. We provide that education, go to conferences as invited speakers and so on.
Right.
and so that we give back, because a lot of times universities can be very internalized, bring students in, generate revenue. Hey, you're doing a great job, Tim. Well, that's really important. We want to get paid, but we also want to give back to the community in the ways that we can. So we do things. I mentioned all of the speaking and training engagements we do. Another example, I do a monthly newsletter where we put out coaching content and leadership content for people in sports. I do the FSU Coach Live interviews. You were a guest on that. We put those out on our YouTube channel and then on a podcast as well. And it's like what you're doing here. It's free learning. It's easily accessible, and you don't have to pay a fortune to do something extravagant.
Right.
Well, that being said, we do have a master's degree. It is 100% online.
Mm-hmm.
When I came here, I had the opportunity to build it from scratch. Most universities don't do that. They say, Nick, we want you to build a sport management degree. Take the classes that exist in the university, piece them together, and we'll call it sport management. I'm just saying sport management, obviously, because I'm athletic directors, but it could be any degree. And that's what I had to do at Oklahoma State. So we had a degree, but it wasn't what I really wanted it to be. Coming here, I was given permission to build the whole thing from zero, which meant hiring new people, creating new classes. So I used the slogan, by coaches, for coaches. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we do. It is 100% online. We don't have tests. I'm not a big fan of tests. I'm a big fan of reflection and discussion. We don't schedule specific times where we meet for class, because guess what? If I say we're meeting at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday night, that's going to be a problem for you and Matt, because it's going to be an awkward time of day or early morning. That's not fair. So we don't do that either. And then we also did a flexible schedule, because you talked about it in just your intro. You're in the busy season. So why should I expect you to take as many classes during that season as you would in maybe an off season or a cool down season? So we allow students to take as many or as few classes as they want. We have football coaches, for example, they don't even take a class during season because it's just too much. Sure. So they do their season, get to the off season, and then take classes. So it really is flexible. And then I also have worked for the university to do a pilot program where we're offering a $12,000 scholarship for out-of-state and international students to encourage them to study at FSU. If you live in Florida, the cost is quite reasonable. If you don't live in Florida, I'll be honest, it's not cheap. So we wanted to help buffer that by saying, hey, you want to come to a top 20 university in the country, we'll try to help you get here because we've got a really good program. So that's where I am. That's our program. That's what we do. There we are.
Yeah. Tim, just curious about that. How long did it take, since you developed that from the ground up, how long did it take you to develop all the courses and build the curriculum and get it ready so that it was good for presentation or good to start teaching?
It went from 0 to approved in a year. And yeah, I saw your eyebrows raised. If you're listening, eyebrows were raised. It's very uncommon. It's very uncommon to be able to do it that fast. We had a lot of support from the board of trustees. We have a state system here, so it's not just a group that oversee FSU, but also several other universities in Florida who all have to have input on this. You can't create a degree in coaching if your neighboring university who's in the same system has a degree in coaching. They may have a say of like, you're taking our students. Right. We don't want you to do that. So it is a big process to get this approved, but there was a lot of support all the way up. As coaches are undertrained, they're underpaid, they don't necessarily know what they're doing all the time or why. Let's help Floridians with this. And the primary goal is Floridians, which is why we have in-state tuition. Right. now Florida State recognized as well, we can market this out everywhere. There are people everywhere who could benefit from this,
Right.
and carry on the flag of FSU in other states and other countries.
Right.
What we did is we started with creating the classes. Again, that takes tons of paperwork. You can't imagine. Well, maybe you can. You're an athletic director. The paperwork required to get these things approved. So we started with, okay, what are we going to teach in the first semester, second semester, third semester? And so we systematically developed those as we went along, rather than developing 10 classes at once.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. And how it's only been a few years. So what's your enrollment like, or how's that grown since you launched?
Yeah, we're not even 2 years old. We opened summer of 21, so we're coming up to our second year anniversary, and we enroll in summer, fall, and spring.
Okay.
And we see different enrollment numbers for each semester. Summer tends to be the quietest, fall tends to be the heaviest, and then spring follows. This spring, we had record numbers. We had a full cohort. I say cohort, it's not really a cohort, but we had 25 students accepted into the program. I think in the fall we had 19. So I'm expecting a good number coming back in the fall. This summer enrollment's still open, so March 1 is the deadline for summer start. So I don't know where we're going to be there, but we have about 45 students in the program. Yeah. And I say about because some are taking one class a semester, some are getting it done in 12 months and busting through. So it really depends on which semester we're in, determines like how many we actually have in here. But we have seen rapid growth in the program.
Yeah, that's like you said, that's the beauty of it, the flexibility it offers at your pace. And is there a time limit when you have to get it all done by?
Gosh, I think don't quote me on this, 7 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, if you're taking a class a semester, you're done in about 3 years anyway, because you have summer, fall, spring. Yeah. Most people will take a class in season, couple classes in off season, couple classes in the summer. That's 2 years and you're done. Yeah. I mean, this is the program I wish I had taken. I mean, really, I built it with, I mean, it was like a kid in a candy box, right? I can put in the classes that I really think coaches need to know. And it wasn't just my opinion. We have an advisory board of people around the world who provide input as to what coaches need to know. But it really was, I don't have to rely on, we have to take sports nutrition with somebody whose research interests are, diabetes in the elderly. Yeah. And has no experience coaching whatsoever and doesn't know anything about sports. No. Everybody in our program who teaches either are or were coaches. I mean, myself, you mentioned I coach pickleball recreationally. I also coach the junior national team for USA Racquetball. I'm out there doing it. I bring that into my classrooms, and I think that's important.
Right. What you said, you could put the classes you wanted and you wish you took it. So tell us one class. Give us your favorite, or which one that jumps out at you that you really, really are happy with.
I'll give you two. One of them I teach. One of my colleagues teaches. The first one my college teaches is called Coaching the Athletes 360. Okay. The idea behind this is we know that the mental health and well-being of student athletes is a huge concern at the moment. I just posted on social media about 5 minutes before we started. There are reports of athletes in a high school not far from where I live who threatened to kill another player on social media. Okay. And this person who was threatened is the only Black player on the team. I mean, these are real problems. We have to, as coaches, how do we deal with a problem like that? How do we handle it? What do we do about it? How do we stop it from even happening in the first place? So the Coaching 360 looks at those kind of soft counseling skills of working with athletes as people. And it's huge. I mean, we have our sports psych class, but that's about performance, right? That's about making Nick and Matt better on the field or pool or wherever they're competing.
Right.
This is about really caring for your athlete and ensuring that one day they invite you to their wedding, kind of thing. So that's one class we developed that I've never seen before. The second one, which is a personal interest to me, and I think as you as well, having been an international student and studied in several different countries, I've seen how hard it is to make that adjustment, to translate into another culture, sometimes another language and environment for sure, and even an academic world. And so we developed a class called Coaching International Perspectives of Coaching, which is looking at how do coaches coach differently in different countries? What can we learn from that? And then as coaches, how do we coach athletes who are from different cultures and countries? Because even in the US, we may have somebody who is born in Miami, grew up in Miami, but their entire family came from Cuba.
Right.
Well, their upbringing and their understanding of family and teams may be very, very different to what mine is. And if I don't understand that or learn their background and appreciate that in the way I coach, I'm not going to be as effective as I could be. So that's a really fun class because we get to look at just how things are done differently in different countries. And then how do we make sure that the athletes that we have in our environment are understood.
Wow. Sounds like two classes I would enjoy.
Yeah, it does sound interesting because you see it and hear probably a lot of different perspectives based on how coaches manage their teams, their strategies, but also the way they develop their culture within their teams with a different culture. And so I got to imagine that's got to be pretty cool to take. And just curious, the guys who teach that, are they like yourself, or is that one you teach, or is that like former international folks?
Yeah, I teach international perspectives. As I mentioned, I grew up all over the place, and I've been in the U.S. almost 20 years. That's hard to believe, but with a gray beard does suggest I've been here a while. But the counseling one is taught by one of our faculty who's a certified mental performance consultant, and so she has that background of working in that environment. So we make sure our coaching for human performance class is taught by a longtime strength and conditioning coach for another university. We make sure that, my goal is to be the best program in the country. So I want to make sure that the students get the best experience they can and learn the most in the environment we can put them in that allows them to learn the most. Right. We're online. It's not easy.
Yeah.
I'd love to be face-to-face with our students. I do believe that they would learn more if I can see their faces when we talk, when we have that group discussion. But that's not achievable in the environment that we're in. Yeah. If you wanted to do our program, you can't give up your job and move to Florida and incur insane amounts of debt in order to study for a couple of years to get this master's. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. And so what we found is about 90% of our students are working full-time in either athletic director positions, sports administration positions, or they're coaching full-time. Okay. And that's where we want to meet them. Stay where you are. Let's help you get better where you are, rather than forcing you to do what I had to do, which was move, find a job, all those fun things while I was there in order to get the education that I have.
Right. You mentioned athletic director, coaches. Do you know what they're trying to do? Are they trying to coach at a higher level and want the masters to help them get there, or they just want to be better at what they're doing now? Do you have a feel for that?
Yeah, it's both. Yeah. A lot of inquiries. I'm a high school coach and I want to coach college. Mm-hmm. Rarely is it I'm a coach and I want to get paid more. Yeah. We don't really get that. sometimes that's an ancillary benefit, right? If you do your master's degree, you could argue you're going to be better at your job. If you're better at your job, you're going to be more visible, more successful, and therefore more likely to get those better jobs. So there is that investment. I mean, let's be honest, if I didn't do my degrees, I wouldn't be in the position I'm in today. I had to do them, but those degrees didn't make me get the job. It gave me the skills necessary to be good at what I do so that I got the job. Yeah. But we also have some who just want to get better. They just want to get better. I know that I don't know something, and I want to know it. And we have several military police force type students who are, I'm going to retire in 5 years. And I've loved sports. I've coached on the side all during my career, and I really want to go into it with a passion when I retire. And so we have, the average age of our student is probably in the 30s, maybe, definitely in the 30s. We don't get the student who graduates their college degree and then just walks straight into the master's. Not very typical. Usually they've been teaching a few years or working in sports for a few years and say, okay, I know a little bit more now. I realize I need to know more. Let me go get trained.
Yeah. Or saved up money. Saved up some money after the first round of university, right?
Right. Well, that's the benefit of working while you do it, is it's not the expense of just rapid debt that you're going to be paying off for the next couple decades. Right. Right. Not speaking from experience, of course.
So that's a pretty nice perspective of your students. Are any of them international, or how many of them would you say are international?
We had our first international student admitted to our program this spring. Okay. And that is a hope of mine, not just because, hey, we've got students all over the world, but I want your perspective. I want to learn from you in Lebanon or Turkey or Austria, or wherever you are. Yeah. I want that perspective, and I want our students in classes to gain that perspective too. Right. We do have students in our program who are international, but they are international living in the US. For example, they may be a student athlete. We had one of our FSU students was from Switzerland, and got a scholarship to come to the US and play basketball. And he was a 5th-year student, and so he did his master's as his last season, and now he's playing in France, I think. Okay. And graduated with his degree. So we do get some of those as well. But the pure, I don't live in the US, I'm going to be a student, we just had our first one this spring.
Neat. Well, you mentioned before the international scholarship, and you also mentioned March 1st as a summer cutoff. Do those two work together? Is that scholarship up for people that might want to start taking classes this summer?
Yeah, the summer deadline is March 1st, as I said, and students who apply who are international will automatically be considered for that scholarship. I mean, there's obviously some hoops to jump through, i.e., you need to be accepted into the program. And for students, I mean, we've had inquiries from students in some countries where, okay, you've got to pass TESOL. Yeah. You've got to be able to speak and write in English in order to be in this class. But once you're formally accepted into the program, it's very simple. I send a list of your name to the administration, and that scholarship is applied to your tuition.
We'll put the links to your program and your Twitter name and everything in the show notes. If people want to go that way, if they don't get to the show notes, where's the best right now that they can go and find out more information, Tim?
Yeah, you know what? If you look for FSU coach, you're going to find a variety of things, because there happen to be about 26 FSU coaches who are head coaches, not to mention all the assistant coaches. And so you can get lost in the football. or the tennis or the basketball of FSU. Truly, the easiest way is to look for my name, Timothy Baghurst. That's hard to miss. There aren't many of us out there in the world.
Yeah.
And from there, I've got the links on my social media and LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can find me everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's a good way to ask questions and just learn a little bit more.
Yeah, that's great. I hope people out there are interested and want to dive in, because that'll just, one coach takes a program like this, it improves everybody. We love sending people off on PD, and because they bring so many things back, to the entire program. And that'd be great.
And for me, it's great to hear these different types of. I have a master's. I got mine in outdoor education actually about 19-20 years ago, which was great at the time. And it was the reason I took it was because it was something different. I didn't want to go into administration. I didn't want to get a PE. I have a bachelor's in PE, but I didn't want to get a master's in PE. So it was something different. It was really interesting. So I'm happy to hear that there's types of programs like this, which are just different and unique, but super beneficial if you're in this field, and something that I think would be very interesting and you can learn a lot from and just have fun while you're taking these courses, I think.
Yeah, it is fun. It's a lot of work too. And I do think we've had some students come into our program thinking, coaching, this will be fun. And realize, no, we've got standards. We're a top 20 institution in the country. I mean, that's with all the Ivy Leagues, you name it. We're in the top 20 because we have standards, because we expect you to work and we expect you to learn. And maybe some of the people that did try to come in maybe didn't have that understanding of work ethic and dedication. But that's a small minority. Yeah. What I will add, Matt, given this is kind of an AD podcast, is we do have people who are in administration in our program. And to some extent, why is that question, right? You can go do your sport management, your ed leadership, whatever. But one of the arguments that I'm being given, because I asked that question, why are you in this program when you could be in another program that is right in your field? Yeah. And the answer that came back has been interesting, which is because I need to learn from other areas to better my own area. And if I'm in my area and I'm just learning from my area, I'm really not learning anything new. Yeah. And the other argument that has been presented to me is, I'm not a coach, I'm an athletic director. But if I need to know what coaches know and what coaches should know and what coaches do in order to communicate with them in a way where they understand me and I understand them and I have some respect from them. Yeah. Because a lot of athletic directors, maybe not in the school systems, but now we're seeing in higher levels, professional sports, certainly colleges in the US, they don't have much sporting experience. Maybe they were an athlete, but they never coached. Right. And now they're directing coaches and not speaking the same language. So there's also that argument too. So we do have people in national governing bodies, for example, who are in our program. And to me, it's like, why are you in our program? Yeah. And that's the response I'm getting. And so, there's athletic directors out there, this is a good way for you to learn what coaches should be coaching and why they should be coaching it, rather than the assumption, well, they know their sport, I'm sure it's fine. Yeah. I mean, recognize statistically about 90% of coaches get no formal training, and of the 10% that do, the majority of it is in care and prevention. So those coaches, most of those coaches aren't trained the way they should be. So maybe you should be as an AD so that you can help.
Wow. Yeah, that's some great points and really interesting stat. I'm sure that stat's from the US, right?
I interviewed the executive director of the National Council for Youth Sports. Obviously in Europe it's higher. Yeah. It's better. The numbers are better.
Well, I was just thinking international school coaches would be way lower. Way lower.
Yes.
I don't know any school aside from a handful that really even cares if their coaches have any sort of coach training in
Hmm.
care or the sport or anything. It's warm bodies, right? And usually
Yeah.
they're teachers. They're trained as teachers and they're good educators, of course. Um,
So I'll tell you a true story. I actually grew up in an international school in West Africa, spent 8 years in those schools, and I had PE in those schools, and none of our teachers, to my knowledge, had any coaching credentials. Any When we went and played sports, they had no coaching credentials, and many times they were coaching a sport again they hadn't played or been trained in. That was one of the real reasons why I wanted to go into coaching, because I've gone and interviewed for jobs where they will ask me who inspired you as a coach or who inspired you in sports, and I had to tell them actually it was the opposite.
right.
I was getting run into the ground because I was punished for whatever it was that I didn't do, or I was being trained this way and I didn't think it was a helpful or beneficial way to train, but nobody knew any different. One of my PE teachers who also did our sports was military, ex-military.
Yeah.
So he ran it like a military camp.
Yep.
And we're just gonna run until we
Yeah.
collapse kind of
Listen to me.
attitude.
This is what we're doing.
And yeah,
Don't ask questions.
yeah, we're not gonna, okay, why are we doing this? Because I said so.
Yeah.
And in those environments, there is no training. And so my experiences were very negative to some extent. And I said, I think there's a better way and I want to know how to do this. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, Nick. It's a lot of, we need a parent to help out. And you say it's part of the international school system. It's becoming that way in the US in the school systems too, where in Florida, I heard recently about 50% of school coaches do not work in the schools.
Wow.
They are outside of the school system.
Mhm.
And it's becoming more so. We've got to train coaches. They need to have at least a minimal training. But if you want them to be effective in a positive way, they need more than that.
Kukri are a global multi-sport clothing brand specializing in providing the world's most prestigious schools with bespoke made and designed team uniforms for students of all standards and abilities. If you are frustrated by inconsistent colors, branding, costs, and sizing across your school's uniforms, then it's time to discuss an offering where every sport is available from softball to soccer for male and female athletes at rates to suit your budget. To find out how Kukri could elevate the apparel of your student athletes to a professional level, email the team at contact@kukrisports.com. A dedicated sales manager will offer you a quote today. Mention this ad and receive a special offer on your coach or PE staff order.
All right, Tim. Well, thanks for joining us today and sharing insight about your program and about yourself. And it's refreshing to hear these philosophies and how things, your perspectives on coaching and working with kids and working with athletes. So thank you for joining us today. And before we go, though, one of the things we always like to ask our guests is usually it's where they're from. So to tell us a little something interesting about Tallahassee or where you're from, or maybe some place you've been that you really enjoy that you would recommend, or if we make it our way to Tallahassee, something we should check out, or if there's something interesting with the food or drink scene there, that would be of interest.
Okay, I'll tell you two things. One, I got to mention Ivory Coast. I spent a lot of time growing up in Ivory Coast. There's a very unique place to visit in Yamoussoukro, which is the capital. It's the actual capital. Many people think it's Abidjan, but it's Yamoussoukro. There is something there called the Basilique, and it is essentially a Vatican that was built, about 20 years ago now, maybe longer. It's incredible.
Wow.
it's bigger than the Vatican. In fact, the story is told that the Pope at the time wouldn't come and bless it because it was taller than the Vatican. So they promised to build a hospital if he came. So he came and he blessed it, and then they didn't build the hospital. But it is truly an astonishing piece of architecture that nobody knows about. And I lived half a dozen miles away from it and visited many times, and it always took my breath away.
Neat.
Tallahassee, one of the things that I think you've got to check out if you're not familiar with this kind of culture and environment of kind of the swamplands. We don't live in swamps, but there's plenty down here, is you have to do some kind of gator tour of some kind. We live on a lake here where we don't swim in the lake because our neighbors are gators. And so at the bottom of our yard, we actually have a gator who lives down there.
Wow.
And my kids have affectionately given it a name, and we've actually caught it on a fishing line because it tried to eat our frog bait and all that fun stuff. But yeah, definitely do a tour that allows you to see gators and in the swamp. The swamps are beautiful. The gators are very interesting and in general harmless because they're scared of humans. They'll take off if you're near them. There's stories, of course, it happens, but in general, they don't want to have anything to do with us, and we don't want to have anything to do with them.
Right.
But it's a pretty neat experience to go and see them in the wild.
Cool. Wow, two very different things, and something to check out. So yeah, thanks for sharing those two little things, and yeah, as Matt said, everything else about your program, and I hope people look it up and you get a couple more international students sometime soon.
I hope so, and thanks so much for having me.
Until next week, this has been another episode of the Globetrottin ADs.